Hi guys, welcome to this one. I'm going to make this as quick as possible. So in going through this tutorial, the original plan was I'm going to show my steps that I make, how I create my pack, and have you follow along at home, do all the downloads, do everything else. As I got through it, I changed my mind on a few ways, how I would be sharing my side of what I create. And it just dawned on me that this is going to be a lot of steps for a lot of people, and this is one of those situations where I'm going to have to do what I don't normally do and share the output project at the end. That being said, I do want this information out there. My purpose of this video, I'm not growing a channel. A lot of what I'm going to show you is just bits and bobs that I've collected across the years, and if you're going to go through this, you might as well, even if you don't use it now, absorb some of the surrounding information. So as a compromise of, giving the community basically just something they can deploy, I'm going to, instead of recording a quick start guide, which I had thought about doing, I'm going to put the quick start guide just in the README file. If you're a power user and you already know all of this, for everyone else, I've decided I'm going to annotate the video. So it's a tutorial that some of these steps, or a lot of them, especially at the start, you won't have to follow, but you might find the information useful. And when you do need to follow a step, it's going to be clearly labeled on screen. So it's going to be like a tutorial with less pausing, basically. We'll see how it goes. Let's get through it. Firstly then, and I'll try and make this quick, what is MAME? So MAME stands for the Multiple Arcade Machine Emulator, and as it says, multi-purpose emulation framework. The reason I'm going to highlight this is people misunderstand MAME in a big way. Its main goal in life is preservation. It's basically there to take hardware and ROM concepts and translate them into an emulated environment. So it's doing what it can to emulate those environments, and as such, it's a group effort. It's been going on for many decades, and it might never be finished. There might never be a version 1.0 of MAME, or if there is, it might be in the very, very distant future once we get the AIs to program it for us. But that being said, bear in mind when you're interacting with anyone that's in the community, the MAME specific community, and you're asking about, specifically, how do I play these games? How do I get things working? And then you're speaking to someone that's an extremely old hat, and they might either ignore you or point out that the main purpose of MAME isn't really for everyone to play a bunch of games. That's kind of a byproduct. And that being said, comes out usually on average sort of once a month, whenever there's updates to warrant it coming out. You can grab it from the official site, which is mamedev.org. Obviously, it requires a romset to run. So the usual legal disclaimers when it comes to ROMs and all of that. In terms of the community around MAME, the Reddit to look at is this one. This will link you to the Discord community where the main discussion and all the release links and so forth drop. And once a month, the page will look something like this. So getting into it then, once a month when MAME drops, the page will look like this. The top is the update sets. So, in fact, I'm going to scroll to the bottom, start from the bottom of this page. So, MAME per release, and we're currently on release 0.263 at time recording. Per release has a ROM set that's associated to it. So for example, you might go online and go to archive.org and just find some old set that's 0.196 or whatever. Well, if you were to drop that ROM set into the current version of MAME, you'd find some things might work, but a lot of things wouldn't. And that's because work's been done in the meantime and those ROM images have changed. And MAME requires a sort of one-to-one ROM set to the version it's running. Past that, the number one thing that really tends to confuse people when they're first looking into this is the various sets. So per release of MAME, you also have 3 different sets of MAME. Split set is one where the parent set contains all the normal data it should, and the clone sets contain only what data has changed compared to the parent set, so it's saving space. Where it's talking about parents and clones, in this context, there's going to be a parent ROM, which, for example, say there's Space Invaders and there's all the clones, which is like, say, there's 20 other versions of Space Invaders, just for example. Well, those might be just variations, small variations on the what they've called the parent game, and therefore they can split out the files such that they don't need to transfer all this data. If you're keeping a set whole, you could go with a split set, and you'd still see the parents and all the clones as discrete files. But to run one of the clones, say of Space Invaders, you'd also need the parent to be present. With the merge set, it takes the parent set and one or more clone sets and puts them all inside the parent set storage. So it's taking those 21 versions of Space Invader combined, and instead of having discrete files, it's putting them all into one file. The thing to consider about this is then if you want to run it from a front end, and if you did want to run those variations and not just the main ROM, how are you going to call it? If you think about how PinUP Popper, for example, loads a visual pinball table, you have a VPX file and that's the game and it runs the game. If you have a file though and it contains 21 games, how do you know which one to run? Well, if you were doing that way, a merge set might not be the best choice. You wouldn't be able to run those other games without doing a lot of extra manual work in somehow setting up command lines to run MAME from the command line instead of from a file, if that makes sense. So coming on down to the final one, which is the non-merge set. This is the full fat version, if you will, with a lot of repetition in its data, because a non-merge set contains absolutely everything necessary to run any one of those games. Any one of those clones can be run separate from the parent if it was copied over to a different computer. They mention the Barson device files, which I'm going to recommend you get as standard anyway, because it's going to help you in future. We'll get on to that in a second. But this non-merge set, if you're doing what I'm going to suggest further down the video and what I've done on my install, which is just to not have every single game, but to have a curated list of just, it's called the all killer no filler set. You would start from a non-merge set to build that, which would be a big download, but it would ensure that when you copy these files out, they're all present and correct. We'll get onto that later, and I'll probably give you an option to download something. But scrolling back up then, so you've got your sets, you've got your update sets. The next thing is the main BIOS and device sets, which, as it touched on down here, we can put these in a different folder, point MAME to them, and it will have these as resources to call upon if and when the files don't exist in those ROMs. If you're ultimately looking to save space, you wouldn't include this in your setup, but I don't think it's too much and it's useful to have, so you'd probably grab that. Then you choose your MAME set depending on what you want to do. So if you wanted some kind of absolute everything on there, you'd probably go for the split set. If you want just a very, very slimmed down version, you'd want the merge set. Or if you want the full fat version that you're going to copy games out of, that would be when you went for the non-merge set. If you're not splitting your pack and copying games out and picking and choosing, the non-merge set is surplus to requirements. You may as well get the split set, if that makes sense. Other thing to consider with MAME is CHD files. These are hard drive images for when those arcade games had hard drives attached to them. Most, if not all, of the ones that I'm running in my deployment don't require a CHD file, and this is a big old pack because it's a lot of data, so you probably want to come in if you need a CHD for a game because it's not running and just get that one file unless you're building a full set of some kind. Software list you can ignore, but it's to touch on it. MAME has now expanded beyond the scope of just arcade and is emulating other hardware and systems, and so the software list is that project. The extras are things like media, and you may want to grab this. As far as I know, these are still named per the MAME file names. So things like clear logos and game screenshots, which is useful for PinUp Popper specifically, which doesn't have a scrape feature for MAME ROMs. If you look at something like Launchbox, which is more designed for handling these kinds of setups, there's a lookup XML, and it takes the MAME file name and it looks it up against that table and it equivocates that to a real name of a game rather than a code, which essentially is what the ROM name is, shorthand version. Where Popper doesn't have such functionality. So if you think about it, once you've dropped, this is getting ahead of ourselves, but with Popper you're going to be relying on the PNG files or the JPEG files as your clear logos to tell what the game is when you're perusing your collection. Yeah. Rollback sets are like the inverse of the update sets, where if you have a problem, you can roll back to a previous version without having to download all that huge amount of data again. All right, guys. So the set I've got on my cab is from 2019. Since I'm sharing this with you, I thought I will update my own version, replace it with a new version. So we'll do the entire process from start to finish with the current version of MAME. Okay, so to quickly run over the files we're starting with. The XE is obviously the current version of MAME. I grabbed the extras and the multimedia, which are saying 0.262, which just means there hasn't been any updates between the last version and the previous version that we're on. The CHDs for the current version. The BIOS device files for the current version, just so I have it, but I don't think we'll be needing it. Since we downloaded the Pleasure Dome version of the non-merge set, and those those BIOS and device files will be in with the ROMs. So this extra pack is about 500 megs, so no harm in dropping it into a separate directory. We'll go over it later just to show you, but it won't actually be needed. Software list, as we said, is not relevant for what we're doing here, and we've got the batch files that I used from last time. This one I've updated, basically combining two of the batch files together. So you see essentially what it's going to do is going to copy certain pre-designated ROMs out to a separate folder called No Filler. And then he released an update as well at some point. At some point. Oh, I was looking to edit it. Where these other games are included as well. We'll have to be aware that it's making an update 1. That's what it's going to call that. And the third one is one I created myself back in 2019, which is a list of list of many of the vertical games. But as I say, I made this back in 2019. So what I thought I'd show you as a bonus is how we go about making any kind of list you would like of, you know, certain types of MAME things, not just for VPIN, but for any scenario. So let's just get that queued up and we'll run through that quickly. Okay, so this this part of the tutorial is going to be optional for a lot of people. You might just find this interesting. And I haven't seen this method parroted around too much. In fact, I might have invented this, although I'm not sure. This is what I did in 2019, and we're doing it again now. So there's this site. It's called arcadeitalia.net. And it's great, because over on arcadeitalia.net, you've got a list of every single game that's in MAME. And you can see there are 10,494 entries here of games, with duplicates included, but things, this is main cab only, so it means things like the BAS device files and, you know, poker and mahjong have been filtered out already. But we just want the vertical games because we want to make a playlist so that we just see our lovely big playfields filled up with pixels. So we can filter this down. Make sure it's on the latest release, which we are. We're not filtering any of these things. We're going to additional filters and leave everything standard, but just to show you, these are the sort of options that they give you. For example, you can set player limits and whatnot if you want to build a playlist of just single player vertical games. Or you can use, I'll obviously give you the outputs to save you doing this process, but under video, your orientation vertical. Let's see, search. Immediately that brings us down to 3,000 games, but there are all these clones. You know, there's a bootleg, there's Seb 1 of 1999, so if you want to play a game that's in the middle of this list, that's going to be a lot of scrolling in PinUp Popper. So if you want to have the full set and you like all these extra games, you can follow this process and stop here filtering, but we're going to add another filter. And we're going to go ahead and select only parent games and none of the clones. This way you can see this is kind of the most standardized versions, if you will. They've designated these ones parents, and so we're down to 1,018 games, which is probably fine. So we just now to go options, export the results to a text file. And we're going to call this vertical list. Click export. I had a trial run of this and it took 2 attempts, so let's see if it takes 2 attempts now. It just takes a while to generate the data sometimes, so we'll save it out to the folder I'm working in, which is new MAME. MAME for VPIN. Cool. Okay, so if we look at our vertical list, what I've already done is there was a description up here, you know, saying that this is the file name and this is the description. We delete that line. Further to that though, we've got all this description that we need to get rid of. These are our file names. They need to be zip files, so we're not going to do these one at a time. We're going to save and we're going to jump over to Notepad++. So if you incidentally, if you haven't used Notepad++, get it. Just Google Notepad++, and once you install it, you'll have this right-click menu that says Open in Notepad++ where it exists. But over here we have a lot more functionality. First thing we can do is to get rid of the descriptions in a big chunk. So if you hold the Alt key down, and then with the left mouse button, you can drag a big box and scroll all the way to the bottom of the page. See all the ROMs. Never click right click by accident. Apologies. Let's try getting to the bottom of the page. Trust me, it'll be worth it. Okay. Now I'm making sure to go as far as I can to the right because you don't want to accidentally, if one of these file names is really long, I've had to re-record this part of the video because there was some a mistake I made because of that. So make sure it's a big old box, and then we're going to hit delete on the keyboard. Cool. So now we are left with a bunch of file names without the zip, and there's a bunch of spaces of all different lengths. To fix the spaces first, you're going to go Edit, Blank Operations, Trim, Trailing Space. You can see it's trimmed all the trailing space. Now to turn these into full commands, what we're going to need to do is add something at the start and add something at the end. So to do that for every line, we're going to create a simple macro. You go to macro and you start recording, and then whatever you type, it's going to be recorded. So to start recording, we'll first say we'll need to jump to the end of the line. It is already, but every line will need this, so we'll press the N key. And then we're going to add a .zip suffix, press space, and we're going to say the name of the directory we are going to copy to. So that's going to be, we'll call it vert only. And then we're going to press down on the keyboard to go to the next line. Cool. And now if we stop recording, we'll save the current recorded macro, and we'll call it zip folder. We're adding a zip, we're adding a folder. Say OK. And now what we can do is we can go to macro, run a macro multiple times, and we're going to choose the one that's called zip folder we just made and run it until the end of the file. Click run. And you'll see we've got the start of our commands. Cool. So now in the same sort of way, we need to add copy, so we can copy this file name. So we'll click at the beginning. We'll go to macro. We'll start recording. We'll click home to make sure it jumps to the beginning of the line. Type copy, space, and then press down the keyboard. And then stop recording. Macro. We'll save current recorded macro. We're going to call it add copy. And now we'll go and run a macro multiple times, add copy until the end of the file. And you can see that should be good. Let's just go to the top and check the beginning. There wasn't any issues on ProGolf. Nope. Right. Alright, just pause the video because that Pro Golf file name threw me for a second. It's 18 Holes Pro Golf is the name of the game, so this is sorting in game order, just to make that clear. Thought I'd made another mistake. The last thing we got to do is go and make it an actual command. So we need to first just make the directory, so it's mkdir vert only. And then Control S on the keyboard to save. And now we will rename this to batch. So press F2, rename the file name to bat from text. And these should all be ready to run. Okay, so I've deleted the old vertical batch file because we've got a nice fresh new one. So we'll run our bats, we'll get our sets together, and let's make sure everything works. So go over to where we have our pack, go to our non-merged MAME set, and we'll drop in our vertical list. This is always the fun part. Press return. And it's created the folder. This command window will be open on my other screen. See if we can catch it. There it goes. You can see it's copying that list of games over into the newly made vert only folder. And there's vert only. How many are we doing? We're up to 300, so I'll pause the video and we'll come back when this is done. Okay, so that took a minute, but it's finished up. We ended up with a vertical games pack of exactly as we expected, 1018. So we'll retrieve our batch file, save the payload for another day. And I'm going to repeat the process with these other two batch files. It's going to create a no filler folder and it's going to create an update folder, and we'll just combine those two folders together once we're done. So I'll run those two now and see you on the other side. Okay, so it's done its copy. I've pulled the batch files back out the folder, and we're just going to go into update one, take all these games, move them, Control X. Go back into our no filler folder and Control V. So now this no filler, all killer no filler pack is complete, and we can see it's 318 games. So there's way more vertical games in the vertical menu than there is the all killer filler menu. They both still feel like a lot when you're in Popper. Cool. So as you can see, what's happening, it's manipulating such a big folder is annoying. Let's just grab these while we have them, and I'll copy these over to be shared over on MAME for VPIN anyway. So let's copy these in. All right, now it's still copying. One thing I thought I'd check is if any of these games require CHD files, and some of them do. So I've cheated by going to the previous version I had of this set and seeing which CHD files are needed. And so there's about 8 of them here. So I'm not going to copy them from the old set. I'm going to copy them from the current set so that it's compatible with MAME. And those files will be in that location. One thing just to show you here that I had some kind of brain fart on before, but yeah, to pick out the CHD games for the vertical pack, what we did was come back to arcadeitalia.net and add an additional filter. So filtering still by vertical games and by parent only, but also by use CHD as a tick. That reveals that these 20 games need a CHD. The MAME set that we're using has 19 of these, with fast draw, I guess, not being available. Okay, so it's finished copying. The sets together then, I guess the no filler set is roughly 8.5 gigs and the vertical games is roughly 2 gigs. The file names, just in case it doesn't come across clear on the video, is the CHD files I know are needed are Blitz, Gaunt DL, Gaunt Leg, Hyperath, Jojo, Kinst, Kinst 2, Mace, Nagano 98, SF3, 3, and that's it. It's 10 of them. Should be 10 of them. Yeah. Alright, so you're at the stage where you want to install one or both of these sets that you've created. If you want to do both, the advice I'd say is set all killer no filler up first, get that working, or one of them. But yeah, all killer no filler up first is the best way, get that working. And then there'll be config files that you'll be able to copy over to the vertical setup, which will save you time. So what we're going to do is we're going to copy over our MAME installer. I'm going to run that. And yeah, extract to the root, and it's going to extract itself, and you're going to see a bunch of different files that look like this. So now it's done extracting. I'm going to go to ROMs. You see it's empty right now, but if we grab our no filler set, Control A to select everything, 328 items, and copy those across, we'll pause the video and come back when this is done. Okay, so the ROMs are done copying. I'm going to run mame.exe. It's going to open on my playfield monitor. And you'll see how MAME looks. It shows the version number at the top and a number of games and whatnot. But really, we only need to configure a few things in here. If we go to general settings to start with, under input assignments, you're going to want to set your player 1 and however many other players controls that you have on your arcade. So to give you an example for player 1, what I'll oftentimes do is I'll go in here and I'll blank out everything that I don't use. So you press delete on the keyboard to clear a key command. Which it doesn't work over any disk for some reason, but regardless, you want to come in and you want to set player 1 up, down, left, and right, buttons 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 and 6 if you have them as minimum, and player 1 start and select. Nothing else really needs to be touched. The only thing is obviously if there's some conflicts happen, but you're unlikely to be playing Mahjong games in the set that we're running, so we won't go too deep into that. You scroll all the way bottom and then return to previous menu when you're done setting your controls, and you repeat the process for 2, 3, and 4. And then in other controls, you definitely want to make sure that your player 1 start, player 2 start, and coin buttons are set as needed. Cool. In my case, I have a version I've already set up with my inputs. So I'm going to copy my config file over. And I'll show you something as well that might be useful for you to know. So generally speaking, once you're done, obviously you come and you click Save Settings. So go and save the settings. It says Settings Saved. Return to previous menu. And then quit out of MAME. And yeah, I'll resume the video. Okay, so what I've done is I've gone to my previous installation of this. Instead of doing all my keys again manually, I've gone and in the config folder, CFG folder, I've copied across my default.cfg file from my previous install. What I'll also say about this file is you want to right-click Properties and Read Only. This just sets my mind at ease. I don't know how I've had controls revert back to default with MAME before, so just as now as a matter of precaution, I'm always going to set my default.config as read-only once it's as I like it. But if we check it's worked, I'll go back into MAME. System settings, general settings, and the input assignments are as I had them. I've deleted everything else and just put the ones I need on there. Okay, so we've installed MAME, we've added our ROMs, we've done our controls. There's one other bit of optional config, which if you saw the power user part of the video, we covered, and that's those BIOS files. Now, if you're just going to be using the pack, this isn't something that's required. But in general, if what you're going to be doing is running, say a split set or a merge set of MAME, and you need those files as reference, what I would tend to do so that when you're importing ROMs, you're not importing those files as well, but MAME knows where they are, is you would take your BIOS devices pack, make a new folder alongside ROMs, call it something along the lines of BIOS, and then transfer that entire pack into that folder. I won't do it on this for ease of just to make sure that our setup works without it, which it will. But yeah, that's what I would say. Once you have transferred that in, you would then go back into MAME. Whoops. Delete MAME. Control Z. Thank you. Go back into MAME. And under your general settings, under configure folders, I think you put it as ROMs. Yeah, ROMs. Add that folder in. So it's going to be, in my case, C, MAME, AKNF, and then BIOS, and then press tab. Won't matter if you add a folder in that that contains nothing, it will just scan here, and if it can find those files, it will include them when it launches MAME. Okay, so we're going to launch a game then now and see what happens. So pick one of the ones that are available. And this is my playfield screen, and we get this nag screen. I'm pressing any key over any desk and nothing is happening. For a start, we don't want this to happen. For a second thing, I can tell that this is on my playfield where we'd want our vertical games to be and displayed in vertical format. This is horizontal and it's on the playfield where it should be horizontal and on the back glass. So we can see something's loading, but it's wrong. Okay, so as you saw, tried to get a game working, didn't load. MAME can be a bit finicky, but that's all right. You're almost always going to need to do something in the mame.ini file when you're doing a new setup, unless you're copying from something you've already got. So we'll open this in Notepad++. And the easiest way of going about this is just for me to explain all the parts that are necessary for us to change from default. So I'm going to find my working version. We'll bring that alongside, and then we'll start the video, and we'll do a quick overview of the mame.ini. Scrolling down the mame.ini, then the first thing we need to change is we're going to set this sleep mode to 0. It's not needed, and that's just something that has been recommended over time from previous installs, shall we say. It's just a go-to I will always do is turn the sleep to 0. Next one, this auto roll setting under core rotation options. We turn auto ROL to 1 to allow it to auto rotate. Scrolling down a little ways, then MAME.ini. Under core MISC options, we're going to go set cheat to 1. The main reason I do this is to allow overclocking if needs be. Specifically in Metal Slug games, you might want to overclock the engine at some point, and so cheating, we'll label that. And then skip game info is that screen that we got stuck on, so we'll skip that. Next one I found then, this OSD output option I had set to Windows, so let's change that. And then a little way down we get into our OSD video options. So video auto, number of screens 1, video 1, maximize 1. In my setup I need to VSync and I need to sync refresh rate. If you don't, then you might find slight, barely noticeable input speed increase by turning off one or both of those options. And then we get into the OSD window video options, which for VPIN is particularly relevant. So this is going to cause whichever screen you specify to be the main screen for the horizontal games. So in my case, it's display 3, which is my backglass monitor, with display 1 being my playfield screen and display 2 being my DMD. So I'm just going to copy this over for the sake of the video. But if you're typing it out, it's // display, all in capitals, and then the number of the display. You should probably know which displays are what by now. From the PinUp Popper setup, that will show you which display numbers are what. Or right-click in Windows, display settings, and it will show you 1, 3, and 2 in that order. So 1 is my playfield, and number 3 is my backglass, and those are the 2 we want to use for MAME. Next chunk of options then we see is a big difference is here under direct 3D post-processing options. You've got this HLSL mode, which in my previous version I have set to 1, and over here we have set to 0. What I'm doing with this is adding a CRT effect, essentially, that I've created myself. So it's got scanlines, it's got distortion, defocus, things like that, to make it look like an old school monitor that it's playing through. What I think I'll do in respect to the pack is I'll save this config file without adding these options, and then I'll do a second MAME.ini that has this in. But if you say you were to copy it into yours and you wanted to turn it off, you could just set enable to 0, and that would also turn it off. The setting of this is sort of outside the scope of this video, but it did take a lot of playing around with over the course of, say, a weekend or something to get it looking good, because I simply wasn't happy with what was out there as presets. So you're welcome to take this and use it. Something I'm quite proud of, and that's available. Last setting right at the bottom here in the MAME.ini is this triple buffer, which I have set to 1. This again might be different on your system. You're welcome to try it. There is one other one, and I almost missed it. It's this vector post-processing option. So much like I made my own CRT filter, slight tweak here to how the vector games, so if you've ever played a Vectrex, for example, or games of that nature, draw their vector graphics. If we set this to 500, it just adds a bit of overburn. So if you want a default, you can come back and unchange this option. I'm not going to make 2 different configs for this. And then we are going to save. and let's see if it works. Okay. So, unlike before, the game has now loaded without nagging us, but it's now a vertical game that's displaying in the correct orientation because of that auto roll setting we enabled. But it's not on the correct monitor. It's on my back glass screen, where we want only the horizontal games on the back glass and only the vertical games on the monitor, on the playfield screen. Can MAME do that? Of course it can. So in order to make this work for us, we're going to take the MAME.ini that we've already configured. We're going to copy it, Control-C, Control-V, and we're going to name that vertical. If I can spell Vertical, if I'm not mistaken. And this is obviously a clone of what we've just configured, named differently. And it's going to look here for any vertical games, and it's going to run all of these options. So anything you change here will be different for vertical games if you need it. By default, the only thing we need to change is the display because it was working. So we just need to put the vertical games on the display 1. Save that. And now when we go run 19XX, not only is the main menu opening on the back glass screen because it's the main monitor in the INI, but run the game, it's now being on our playfield screen. Cool and all, I mean, it loads, it'll play, but I still don't like the look. It looks, you know, a bit bright, a bit pixely. So, like I was saying, the vertical INI is different from the MAME.ini, and also the screen is different. So I've got my own version of the scan lines I made for vertical games and my own version of scan lines I made for the horizontal games on the back glass, and they're both going to be different. So again, what I'm going to do is open up our MAME.ini, the current one. On the left, open up my one from my working version I had previously on the right. And I'm going to go down and find those juicy scan lines that I made. Copy that entire bulk, that area, Direct 3D post-processing options. Find it over here. Make sure it matches. And then paste. That should be good. Like I said, if you wanted to come and turn this off, you could either make your own settings by tweaking these numbers or doing it in the menu, and then come and turn this to 0. So that's sweet. Let's just save. And then we don't want to forget vertical, the INI has its own config. The scan lines I made for the horizontal, I made for the back glass first, didn't look quite right on my 4K playfield screen. So we take that, copy, overwrite what's there, paste. But in your case, it would be a case of changing a 1 to a 0 in the INIs that I supply, because it's going to be this same folder. You can feel the anticipation in the air. Much better. Now, all this artifacting is from AnyDesk. I'm dialed in here over remote viewing software, but you can see I've rounded the corners off, adjusted the colors, added scan lines. scanlines. Brilliant. My thumb's annoying. Okay, so that's all killer no filler set up and working. We're obviously going to skim through the setup of the vertical pack, but just so you've seen every step, we'll take the same install of MAME, drop it in vert only. We will run it, extract everything into that location. That's done. Now what we're going to do is copy our ROMs in. So I'll pause the video. Okay, so we got our vert only pack that we made from our script. Control A. Copy those in. So the ROMs are done copying in. I'm going to quickly go back in and run MAME real quick, just to generate these extra folders. And then we're going to quit MAME. And assuming you've already done the all killer no filler set, you'll have a CFG default.cfg, which we're going to copy. If you're only doing the vert set, you'll go back to the stage in the video where we start doing our config and apply the same steps to this, to the vert pack. We'll make sure our config file is read-only, and we'll make sure our controls are looking as we want them in MAME. So we go to General Settings, Input Assignments, User 1, and we can see that's worked. So again, we did all the ionize business that we need to do in the all killer no filler setup. We just need to copy paste those same MAME and vertical.ionize into our new folder, and we'll just make sure one of the vertical games is working. There goes correct orientation on the back glass on the playfield and scan lines. One other thing just to mention real quick, and that's if you happen to be one of these cab users that has the screen mounted the opposite way, to as I've shown in the video, under the core rotation options where we have auto roll set to 1, you'd set that to 0, and then auto ROR you will set to 1. And just to show you how that looks, go to MAME and go into the same game, you'll see it's rotated, but 90 degrees in the other way. Okay, so if you made it this far, congratulations. You have 2 working sets of MAME, and you've seen some pretty advanced options. Next, or probably final step of the puzzle really, is just to get this working into PinUP Popper, which if you've done this sort of thing before is somewhat as you've seen before, but we'll show all of it. So what I'm going to do under emulators, as I said, I've had this set up previously. I'm going to make it all from fresh. So a new emulator, I'm going to call my display name arcade, AKNF. Description, same, I guess. MU name, we can call this AKNF. Launch exe folder. It's open on my other screen. Let's bring this over. It's going to be C, MAME, AKNF. And that's our launch exe folder. Games folder is going to be C, MAME, AKNF, ROMs. Extension will be zip. That's not required. That can be required. And let's go ahead and save. I'm just going to cheat and double check versus my old version. And looks pretty good to me. Media directory. So we can combine our media for both sets. So let's do that now. So we're going to go ahead and make our media directory for both our sets. C, PinUp system, pop MAME, MAME, and then any crossover media at least, while it's going to be an unorganized pack, and we'll get onto that later. It's at least going to share it across multiple versions of MAME if you choose to install them. Now, if we go to our working version, I'm just going to copy this over, and then we're going to go over it that way for speed. So we'll copy our launch script, copy our paste script, which you can do from the text file that I'll provide. We'll go over it. This first, it likes to set a drive and a directory, so that's useful. We'll go ahead and change this, and I'll add this in later for me. We will say CD, and we'll call it what we called it on our C drive, just to check, which is MAME AKNF. So CD C : MAME AKNF. That's not needed for you guys. We will start in the directory, and it's going to be calling the process MAME AKNF, which is fine. And then we're going to be starting our game itself. So I used to have this on D, but we're all now on C. So we're going to go basically what's up here. We're doing this on the fly. Really just don't need that. And then we're going to start /B MAME64. This again, where we needed for the general public. And we will say that's good. Okay, so we've added an emulator. Let's import the games. Games manager, add new games. Scan filter emulator is going to be AKNF. And then I'm going to scan for new games. Don't include subfolders, but I guess it doesn't matter. And we will select all, and we will add games to system. Just found all of them. And now again, these are going to be our shorthand names for now. Let's pause it there and have a look and see what we've got. Okay, so I went and cleaned up my my old install of this just so it's clear on the video. Let's go to playlist config and add new playlist. Call it arcade AKNF. In my case, it's down the bottom here, and then we're going to filter emulator AKNF and hold shift and down arrow together. Don't know if there's a better way of selecting all. Haven't seen it yet. Probably is, and I've missed it. But soon enough, got them all. Add games. Okay, so visible on the system. Should be good. Let's close. Okay, so classic thing happened. Ran down to the cab, tried to play it, and error message. And I know what I've done wrong. If we go back into our emulators for both of them, well, we haven't done the other one yet. Full killer, no filler. And under our script, this used to be MAME 64. Now MAME is 64-bit. And it's changed. So we'll go ahead and call this just MAME. Go ahead and call this just MAME. And we'll click save. Right, now for real, I'm going to run downstairs and show you on the phone. Cool, we're down the cab, and you can see it's found it in Popper, found our playlist, hid in there, but oh, the games are blank. See a weird game name, and that's the ROM name, but no artwork, so no game name. Let's run at random. Hopefully it works this time. Is it going to be backglass? If it prompts, just say enter. And yeah, it's loaded. So, and if we were to pick one that's say that's a backglass, a playfield game, we'll load in the playfield. Let's just see if we can. First one should be. It's like one of the 19 XX games or something. Yeah, there we go. Happy days. So the hard part is over. They run the right screens and they look good. Now we're just going to go back upstairs and we're going to put some artwork on and we're going to do our vertical pack. Okay, so let's quickly whiz through the same process for the vertical pack then, because the media is its own thing. If we go to emulators, add another new one. Display name arcade vertical. Description the same. We'll call this vert only. Launch exe folders gonna be MAME vert only. The games folder is gonna be C. MAME vert only ROMs. The extension is going to be zip. And the media dir again is going to be the Popper directory. So let's save it for now and we'll go to our other arcade and we'll copy everything across. So copy the shared media directory. Copy the launch script. And copy the close script. Then on the launch script, the only thing that needs to change is the path, the original path. So instead of MAME AKNF, C MAME vert only. Or again, I'll put this in the README for this to be copied in. Let's click save, close that out. And we need to go and import the games. So games manager. And new games. It's called vert only. Scan looks about like the right count. Yep, 1018. Select all, add them. Just pause the video for a sec while this does this. Okay, so all those games made it in. Quit out of here. Go to our playlist config, add new playlist, arcade, vertical, and then filter emulator by vert only. And then I'll pause the video while I select all these games and click add games. Okay, so I've added the games, and you can right click select all on this menu, which I don't know. I thought that right click was doing nothing the last time around, so it must have been me. Right click select all to get them all. So we've added them all to arcade vertical, close that. And now we'll go to our media manager, playlists, and arcade vertical. And we're missing a back glass here, so let's grab that. Excuse me while I find the folder. Drop in our back glass, which is, you might be able to make a better one. This is what I was able to find that just shows vertical games, and drop in our wheel if we need one, which we do. So drop that in. Should be available now in the front end. Just to show you what I'm going to do then on the media front, I'm not going to make you watch all of it, but this concept might be useful for you if you ever want to create your own thing. Again, we're limited by a lot of the media that's out there for MAME is going to be named per the actual name of the game. We're limited with Popper to only media that's named per the name of the ROM, which is what the official media set from MAME is, and it gets pretty comprehensive. There were some missing games before, but they might be fixed now. As we can see just with hovering over it though, the video snaps, which we'll be using I think for the back glass for each game, all in all the entire pack is 14.4 gigs, and we're maybe holding 8% if that. So if we go into MAME extras, this is where we can find things like the snap, which is, I believe, going to be a screenshot. Bad example. But yeah, so it's a screenshot background, which if we're missing some videos, we could use these. But hopefully the videos will cover it all. And its logo. In fact, we can view this with Honeyview, but the logos, that's not the one. There might be titles. I'll find whichever one has the logos on, which we can use for the wheel. And basically, it's not that either. Basically, what the plan is I'm going to take each one of these batch files, and I'll show you with one of them. I'm going to copy it. So we've got our vertical list. We're going to rename it media vertical. And we're going to edit in Notepad++. And what we're going to do is we're going to Control H to replace. We're going to find everything that says .zip and replace it .mp4 like our video snaps. And we'll replace all. Close, then save. Just make sure that it looks kind of fine all the way over, and it does. Close that. So now, much like I did with the ROMs, what I'm going to do is do the same for each of these. I'm going to create a set of media, which I'll include, as opposed to you having to do this. But I'll include these files anyway, because why not? Okay, back after that. All right, guys. So it's the next morning. Got my coffee. Spending a good couple of hours finishing up last night, scraping down those main packs for the media. and create some notes on it. So basically, I documented what I did here in the README file to try and pull some of the media out for different uses. Try to make some, if we look in this, have a look actually, if we look in this Popper menu folder I created, so I've extracted what can be used as backglass MP4, PNG files, help files, info flyers, and vertical playfield. With the vertical playfield though, I'm not going to use them on my cab. I've got a 4K screen and these are less than 720p videos as they come out of MAME media pack. For they needed rotating, which I've done. I also wanted to mute them actually as part of, as part of the part of the process with breakaway, with handbrake, but for some reason the audio is on this still, these files. You can't hear it in the video. I will. It's less than 2 gigs. I'll make this folder available. What we're going to do in our case, though, as part of this tutorial, is I'm going to build my own set. I think for the rest of the art, we'll drop them in the various folders. We'll have a look in the Popper. We'll see how much is missing on the wheels, because that's the most important thing. And then if there are any wheels missing, I might have to plug those holes in manually in the media pack. Just real quick then, so it's on the video in case anyone is super struggling. I've created these 4 folders in C, PinUp System, Pop Media, MAME, and then I've manually created these folders, which is what they're the ones we're going to be populating, and the rest will fill in when we go into Popper. So in wheel, we'll copy everything from the wheel folder into game info, anything from the info flyer folder, game help, everything I found for help, and backglass, I'll copy a combination of the videos and the still images. Things are just copying into these folders. I'm just going to repeat myself one more time. I've said this probably about 2 other times in this video. With our file structure here, we're doing a PinUp System, Pop Media, MAME, and the reason is this MAME art folder can be shared against both our different sets. So both our All Killer No Filler and our Vert set are going to be looking for their artwork in the folder called MAME together, which means there'll be no duplication of artwork between those 2 packs. I'm in the process of updating these wheels. You can see I'm down to C. My process is basically, so some of these games, some of these games, they don't have artwork in any format that's been pre-made, and it's because we've imported the vertical pack, and there's all these, things like these prototype games that are rarities, shall we say. But that's pretty cool to have on the wheel. You want to occasionally dip in and find something that's a bit of a hidden gem or just a curiosity or whatnot. Anyway, so what I'm doing is where nothing exists, I'm going to take a snip of the name here in Arcade Italia and use that as the wheel, just so the name is accurate. In other cases, what I've been able to do is find things like the image of the marquee that wasn't in the pack and just drop those in. Or a few of them, where's Coco Loco? I did a bit of quasi-editing where there was this yellow text on a black background, and I've, made this transparent, little things like that. So I'm not going overboard with the wheels. I'm just going to make it so that it's legible in Popper, I'm going to do this in sort of chunks and take breaks from my own sanity, and whenever that's done, next part of the video. Little way into this then, or over halfway, after a couple of different sessions. I'll show you one quick tip, which probably a lot of you are aware of, but if you're doing your own artwork, I'm going to do this with as many of the logos as possible. If you've got a black background and you want to make it clear, the program I use is a free program called GIMP. So you can just find that. GNU image manipulation program. Grab that. Once you've installed it, you'll get a open as option. And so for this, for example, right click, open with GIMP. And then to make a black background clear, you're just going to go to tools, or sorry, colors, color to alpha, use the dropper tool, click on the black, and then it's clear. Then you need to go and file and export as. Make sure it's still the PNG. I'm just overwriting the file that's already there. Export and replace. Export. And there you go, clear image. All right, so I've got somewhat of a set together here. It is a mix of clear logos and logos with a background. If someone wants to clean this up, obviously, you know, go ahead. But anyway, I'm going to go into Popper and make sure it looks sort of half decent. If things need deleting and refinding, then I will do so, but I'm not gonna aim for making this pack sort of perfect with all clear logos, because it would mean deleting the vast majority of these and importing them one by one, which just I'm not in the position to do right now. So and the reason for recording this, remember to, in Popper Setup, go to Popper Setup, global config, game wheel toolbar, and reset all thumbs. Now when we launch, should be able to see my playfield. We'll check in vertical pack. And looks a bit cluttered, but at least we can see what the game is. Let's go to one random. There you go. Would you have known that Azur AN means Azurian attack? You might have guessed Bagman. Anyway, you'd at least be able to scroll through, find the game, and play it. Just to quickly add this in, if you're about to follow on from the next step, make sure you go into PinUp Popper without the front end running. Go to Popper Setup and then click Backup DB. Are you sure you want to back up database? And click Yes. Okay, so I'm going to have to immediately correct myself over the last clip. There is a way to get the names correct in Popper, which is going to be nice for the menus, and it's going to make things in the correct order. It still doesn't fix the problem with the artwork needing to be linked to the ROM name, as far as I can see. So the art situation remains where it would take a bunch of manual effort, as far as I can see, to take a set of, modern set of clear logos and transfer them to those old school file names, essentially, or the correct file names, just because that's how a lot of other front ends don't do things. Anyway, to update your game names, ideally go and get the latest version from nailbuster.com. It'd be this file here, MAME games export full.zip. Now I've already tested it on mine for recording this, but we'll do it again. I'll extract it here. You get this pup games file, and then over in PinUp, go to the games manager. You filter by AKNF. Now you can see I've already done it, but right click, update games from file, won't add new, and then you select that pup games. Yes. And it's going to go ahead and it's going to extrapolate these game display titles so that they're the correct, and it'll fill in some of the game themes. So you using this, in fact, you might be able to make additional playlists if you'd like. If you want just a playlist of shooter games out of the AKNF set, after running this patch from Nailbuster, it should be fairly straightforward to do. So this is taking a minute just to execute. It's I'm going to pause the video. It's the exact same process. You'll need to do it both on AKNF and on vert only. So we've done AKNF. Now you'll switch to vert only, which again I've already tested. And the file names before running it will look, you know, shorthand, and probably some of them still are if they're missing from the database, but it will catch up a whole bunch of them when we go to update games from file, pick the pop games file and say yes to that. Okay guys, if you made it to the end, thanks for watching. I'm not going to make this outro too long, just to say, you know, I've put this together in response to a need that there clearly was, since I see the same questions coming up again and again. So yeah, not really looking for credit on this one outside of the scan lines. If you're sharing the scan lines, definitely, you know, those were mine. But no, yeah, feel free to expand upon this pack, get the artwork cleaned up. You know, there's bound to be something I've missed. There always is. So if there is any blind spots, please stick them in the comments. And yeah, happy gaming.